This is Luke chapter 12 and verse 15 in the NLT. Then he said, "Beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own." I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rokakodash, Kwadash, Salakia. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yashar Allah, and a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwat, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. All right, I want to go into a lesson through the Spirit, going into this concept. You know, we have grown up in a society where we've been taught that our value is determined by what Esau has set up, meaning possessions, status according to how useful you are in Esau's system. And the Lord told us to guard against that. All right, to guard against every type of greed, because when you look at capitalism, Esau's system is set up based on the notion of covetousness. All right, the scriptures tell us not to do that. As a matter of fact, let's go into it. All right, this is Exodus 20 and 17. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Now let's go into the word covet. All right, covet is hamad, salakia, hamad. It says to desire. Covet, take pleasure in, delight in, to desire. All right, to be desirable, to delight greatly, desire greatly. All right, it says to delight in, covet, greatly beloved, lust. All right, desire, take pleasure in. So it's baked into our law not to compete, you know, not to have this idea of keeping up with the Joneses. That's baked into our law. And we live in a society that's completely opposite of our laws. And I'm bringing this back home to the point that we live in a society, especially you Negro, Latino, and Native American men, where you've been taught that your only value is how useful you are to Eve and Esau. But the Israelite man brings more to the table than just being a utility for the beast system and a servant unto women. Because in the ancient world, a man was a provider, but his woman was a helpmeet. The man wasn't a servant unto the woman. And we live in a society where Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans have been brought so low because your self-esteem is tied to what you have. And the Lord told us not to think that way. The problem is that we live in a society where a covering cast has been covered over our people. And we've been taught our entire life that our value, all right, as men, as Israelite men, is based on what we have and not who we are. But that's how Esau values himself, because he has nothing else to offer. If you look at Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, as a nation of people, outside of hoarding the resources and violence and stealing and deception, they have nothing else useful for the planet. Whereas you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, your very mind is the mind of innovation. Not to mention your physical capabilities. The spirit that the Lord has given us as a nation of people is very particular and special, which is why it's being utilized throughout history to build up societies and kingdoms. Yet we've been taught in this society that our only value is what we can do as far as utility in Esau's system. How useful are you to Esau determines your value. Can you keep your people distracted? All right, you're valuable. And we'll prop you up as valuable. The fact that our nation looks up to athletes and entertainers shows you something very important as far as what Esau has established. Because in the ancient world, we would not look up to entertainers and athletes. We would look up to our true leaders. All right, the government that is set up through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai as an example of how to be. When I say look up to, just an example of how to be and operate in the earth. Our people are taking that example from athletes and entertainers. And the only thing that they can show you, these athletes and entertainers, is how much they own. And it breeds the culture of covetousness, which the Lord told us to guard ourselves against. And the beauty of it is that once you know the truth, this illusion that Esau's created, where your value is determined by what his fiat currency, what status you have here. Once you know the truth, that illusion is broken, and you no longer care about what people think about you, your own family, for the sake of the truth. And you become numb to the things that are important to these people. As the scriptures say, all these do the Gentiles seek. What manner of clothes I should wear, my food, taking thought for tomorrow, saving up a bunch of money for retirement. All of those things do the Gentiles seek. Now, we have to be in the world and move a certain way and handle our responsibilities. But ultimately, the Lord is saying, don't put stock in this place. Don't put your heart into this place. Don't do that. And that's why this scripture reigns true. John 8:32. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. All right. You've been set free from the bondage of expectation, because you understand that it's all a game. It's all fake. You can climb Esau's ladder and get all the status you want just for him to call you a nigger anyway. Excuse my French. Just to still be harassed in his system, because money doesn't buy access. And in many cases, money doesn't even buy influence. And what I mean by that is Mayweather is famous, but he's not able to change the reputation of our people. He has more privilege than the average Negro, Latino, or Native American, but his money doesn't change how the world looks at us as a nation of people. Which shows you this whole game is fake. And it's set up a certain way so Esau can feel like he's more important than he really is. All right, this is Ecclesiastes chapter 10. I'm going to jump down to verse 30. The poor man is honored for his skill, and the rich man is honored for his riches. He that is honored in poverty, how much more in riches? And he that is dishonorable in riches, how much more in poverty? And Esau is a rich man who's only honored for his riches. That's the only thing he can truly bring to the table. If you strip that from him, what does he have to offer the planet? Exactly. And that's why he set up a society where you have to have a bunch of stuff to be looked at as somebody, because that's his mentality. That's why the scriptures say this in Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter. This is Habakkuk 2:5. Yea, also, because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. You know, some people are so poor, all they have is money. And that's Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, as a nation of people. That's why the Lord said this about us as a nation. All right, there's Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 6. Folly is set in great dignity, and the rich sit in low place. All right. The rich are you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. All right. Rich in spirit through the spirit of Yahweh by Shem Yahushai. And you are the inheritors of the blessing. The blessing that's been promised to our forefathers, you stand to inherit that. All right, real quick, this is Revelation chapter 3. And I want to jump down to verse 10. You know what? I want to get this first. This is Revelation 2:9. I know thy works in tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. As Israelites, we are born rich. We're born into the nation that the Lord has chosen above all nations to be the husbandmen of the earth, to be the rulers under Yahweh Shai. And though we're in a lower state now, the promise is inevitable. The dominion and rulership under Yahweh Shai is inevitable, meaning we are on the right-hand side, trust fund babies. And our wealth isn't determined by Esau's standard. This is why they hate to see you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans happy. Because with all the wealth they have, they're still not They're still not happy. They're still miserable because you don't gain peace. You don't gain true happiness in possessions. And the Lord gave Jake such a rich spirit that even in a lower state, Jake can still show that wealth in spirit by being happy in a lower state. And it messes with Esau's mind because his happiness is tied to possessions. And the Lord told us to guard our heart against that. But once you see through this, once you understand that, you see right through this whole BS that they call a society. It's all based on people competing with each other. And for what? For money that's not real. To eat food that's not considered food. And to go to places where you have to ask permission. That's why we wait for a new heaven and a new earth wherein dwells righteousness. And the beauty of it is that our heritage, part of our legacy through the Spirit, part of our inheritance through the Spirit is wisdom. And wisdom travels across all societies. Throughout all history, what's written in the scriptures reigns true. And it gives us a way to navigate through any society, really. And one important part that the Lord left in here is to understand that your life is not valued by what you have. And see, Esau needs our people to believe that because that keeps them on the hamster wheel. This is why you see the podcast conflict of a man has to be over 6 feet and make over 100K. That's defining a man based on possessions. That's an Edomite mentality. And that's so completely opposite of our nation's heritage and what we actually came from, that it's a reason it doesn't work for our people. In the ancient world, you weren't defined by your possessions. You had rich Israelites, you had poor Israelites. But the law was set against being covetous. Our value system was completely different. It wasn't based on possessions. All right. And see, once you see through the madness, and you no longer measure your happiness and your value to possessions, Esau loses power, or whatever power he thought he had. Even when you deal with the hour of temptation, it's going to catch our people because their value is attached to possessions. Their value is attached to the status that they have and the position they have in this society. Once you know the truth and the truth sets you free, you can refuse the chip because your value isn't tied to it. It's not tied to the system. It's tied to Yahweh Shema Shai. And that's why, let me get this. Because everybody in the earth is searching for peace, right? Happiness, whatever they have different words for it. Peace, happiness. That can only come from the Spirit. There's no possessions that'll give you true peace and happiness. It may give you temporary bliss. You know, that temporary exciting moment. You getting ready to go on vacation. You know, you just got off of work on a Friday and you got 2 days off. That's a temporary happiness. That's a temporary peace and comfort. The Lord gave us true peace. All right. This is John 14:27. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Because the world can only give you a peace that's temporary, that's tied to possessions, that's tied to experiences. But when your peace is tied to Yahweh Shema Shai, whether you be abased or abound, your peace still remains. When this society falls, our people's hope is so tied to this. Our people's identity is so tied to this system that they're going to do whatever Esau tells them to keep whatever they think they have. That's why the Lord said those who will save their life shall lose it. And those who will lose their life for my name's sake shall find it. Because this is where the true peace is found. It's not found in possessions. Look at the rich of our people. Do they actually look truly happy and peaceful? They don't. Because if your happiness is tied to possessions, you're always going to have a new possession. If it's tied to money, the love of money, there's no dollar amount that's sufficient. And before we had to go through it, the Lord just told us. The Lord just gave us the window. He gave us the wisdom. All right. Matter of fact, now I want to go back here to Revelation 3. I'm going to jump down to verse 17. All right, concerning 2/3 of our people, because thou sayest, I am rich and increase with goods and have need of nothing, and knowest not that thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. Because you fixed your confidence to possessions. You fixed your confidence to the security in Esau, Edom, the so-called white man system. So when it falls and the Lord judges it, you're going to be offended. Because your identity and everything that you have concerning peace or whatever peace you think you have and confidence is tied to Esau's system. And his system is tied to covetousness, where your confidence and your status is based on how much you own and possess. And that's the snare that's going to make 2/3 of our people take that chip, along with the fear of death. But that's another topic for another day through the Spirit. All right, so Lord willing, this was edifying. With that, I want to give all praise. Matter of fact, let me get this too. All right, because one of my initial points was to highlight how Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, has duped or deceived the men of our nation into tying their value to his system. So our people are willing to risk their life to sell drugs, to have a certain amount of money, to impress the women of our nation, who are also, for the most part, tied to this system where they only look at you as valuable based on what you possess. And as a result, 2/3 of the men of our nation, they have low self-esteem because only a small percentage of our men are able to get a mass amount of wealth. And that's intentional by Esau, Edom. All right. It's intentional to show that one can make it, so the rest of you try to make it. And if you don't, you feel like a failure. And at that point, without confidence, you're no longer a threat to him. But once you know the truth and the truth sets you free, at that point, you transcend this system and your confidence is tied to Yahweh Shema Shai. That's why the Lord said this. Let me get this. It's Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 26. For the Lord shall be thy confidence and shall keep thy foot from being taken. And that's when you look at the chastening of Yahweh Shema Shai, all it is doing is reinforcing your ability to be confident in the Lord, even though you are in a moment of uncertainty. Because in this hour of temptation, which is a moment of uncertainty, our people are going to default to trusting Esau over Yahweh Shema Shai, because Esau is ultimately their confidence. All right. Now, going back to Isaiah, I want to point this out, because even though as Israelite men, we're the top men on the earth, we've been cast down to a lower state. Yet the Lord's going to restore us as a nation of people, beginning with the elect. And truly, the Spirit is being seen on the elect. That's why the Lord said the kingdom of heaven cometh not by observation, because it's being seen in the men of the Lord, beginning with our apostles and elders, and how they conduct themselves and move, and the confidence that they have in the Spirit, not tied to Esau's possessions. And at that point, Esau can do nothing but come down with great wrath. He's already lost the narrative. And now the confidence of the elect is no longer tied to the system that he's manufactured. Meaning, whether the elect are based or bound, they have confidence in Yahweh Shema Shai. And the Lord has given them the eyesalve to rejoice in this moment, because we understand it's the judgment and the repayment for everything Esau's done to us as a nation of people. Our salvation is nearer than we believe. All right, so real quick, this is Isaiah 13 and 12. It says, I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. And that precious man is a man of the Lord, a man who's not governed by greed, who's not governed by the desire for possessions, who's not governed by the lust of women, who's truly led in confidence through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai and in service of Yahweh Shema Shai. That is a man more precious than fine gold, because the majority of these men out here are only looking for possessions and status. Whereas the Lord is raising up his men after his image, and the Lord hate— hated seeing especially an Israelite man coveting his brother's stuff, because the Lord is so abundant. We're going to have more than heart could wish in the kingdom of heaven. That's why the Lord said, what value is it that you sold your soul to temporarily have some kind of comfort, whereas in the kingdom of heaven, you're going to have more than enough, more than abundance. The Lord said, our heart shall fear, enlarge and fear for the prosperity. And then you have 2/3 of our people who have done shameful things behind closed doors to have a certain amount of wealth on this side, which is going to fall away anyway. And then they're going to learn through death by pain and come back in the kingdom with more than they had on this side. And that's going to be a part of that everlasting shame. All right. But again, they'll get over it through the Spirit at a certain point. All right. So Lord willing, this was edifying. With that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory. Man, you know what? I got to get another one. All right. This is Lamentations chapter 4. And this shows you that it's not based on possessions, that the spirit of an Israelite man is more valuable. Is the spirit of an Israelite man in their right mind is more valuable than any of these possessions. The most coveted possession on the planet, all right, under Yahweh Shai, is the Israelites. If you have control of the Israelites, damn near sky's the limit. But we've been taught not to value the spirit the Lord gave us. We've been taught to value Esau's possessions over that. And that's the snare that's going to drive 2/3 of our people to take the chip. All right, this is Lamentations chapter 4:1. How has the gold become dim? How is the most fine gold changed? The stones of the sanctuary are poured out in the top of every street. The precious sons of Zion, comparable to fine gold. How are they esteemed as earthen pitchers, the work of the hands of the potter? It says, man, matter of fact, let me get this in the NLT. The NLT is really going to highlight this. Lamentations 4:1 in the NLT, how the gold has lost its luster. Even the finest gold has become dull. The sacred gemstones lie scattered in the streets. See how the precious children of Jerusalem, worth their weight in gold, are now treated like pots of clay made by a common potter. Because Esau can't win in the spirit. If you put the spirit of an Israelite man next to an Edomite man, there's no comparison. That's why Esau has to change the way the game is played. And now it's about fiat currency and possessions. This is why they hate to see a Jake from the hood, or a Jake that's making $20,000 or $30,000 a year, who's clearly poured in a rich Edomite, come in a room and have more confidence than the Edomite. They hate that. But it's because our spirit, we're rich in spirit through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shai Shai. We're not defined by these possessions. We've just been deceived into believing that. All right, so Lord willing, this was edifying. With that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rokah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasha Allah, and a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word.